They dragged him into the dust, while the noonday sun burned white above the mesa. Eli Mercer's wrists bled against the hemp rope cutting deep into his skin. Around him, the Apache camp had fallen silent, only the wind spoke, whistling low through the canyon like an ancient warning. He searched the crowd, faces once familiar now, hard with betrayal. He'd traded, laughed, broken bread with these people. Now they looked at him as if he were poison. The air shimmered with heat and judgment. Somewhere, a hawk cried. Then a woman's voice broke the silence. "Stop!" Naomi burst through the gathering, her black hair whipping wild in the wind, turquoise beads flashing at her throat. "He's done nothing wrong," she shouted, first in English, then in Apache. No one moved. Then she said it, the words that struck the entire camp like thunder. "He is my husband." A gasp rolled through the crowd like a ripple of fire. Eli felt his heart stop. He hadn't wanted it to come to this, not here, not like this. But Naomi's voice trembled with conviction, her eyes burning with a truth she would no longer hide. 8 months of secrecy shattered beneath the desert Sunday. The chief's shadow fell across them, his face carved from years of war and grief. "Then you both," he said coldly, "will answer for the sin of binding 2 worlds that were never meant to meet." The camp stretched across the desert floor like a sea of sun-bleached hides and smoke. The air shimmered with heat, carrying the smell of mesquite fires and tanned leather. Beyond the circle of lodges rose the red cliffs of the San Pedro Ridge, their jagged shadows cutting across the sand like the bars of a cage. Eli Mercer had lived among these people for over a year. A trader from the frontier, he had come with a wagon full of iron tools, gun oil, and cloth things the Apache needed. Things they would trade for horses, hides, and stories. He had learned enough of their language to bargain fairly, to smile when words failed, and to bow when silence spoke louder than speech. It was there, among the fires and the barter, that he'd met Naomi, daughter of Chief Halona, a woman raised between 2 worlds. Her father had once parlayed with the U.S. cavalry. Her mother had died in a raid years before. Naomi carried both her parents in her eyes, her father's iron will, her mother's restless kindness. Their first meeting had been harmless, an exchange over a crate of silver beads. Their second lasted hours. By the 5th, words were no longer enough. Somewhere between trade and tenderness, between laughter and danger, they'd crossed a line neither could step back from. They had wed in secret deep in a canyon under starlight, before an old priest who asked no questions. For months, they met in hidden places. A cave by the stream, a grove of cedar where the sound of water hid their whispered promises. But now, in full daylight, surrounded by the tribe, the secret that had once united them had become a weapon that might destroy them both. The moment Naomi's confession echoed across the camp, silence cracked apart into chaos. Voices rose like a storm shouts in Apache, angry, disbelieving, wounded. A circle of men closed in around Eli. He couldn't understand every word, but the tone was unmistakable. Outrage. Chief Halona stepped forward, his face carved in shadow. He was a tall man, his gray hair bound with leather, his eyes sharp as flint. He looked not at Eli, but at his daughter. "You speak of marriage?" he said in English, each word precise, controlled. "With a foreigner? With a man who desecrates our laws?" "He desecrated nothing," Naomi cried, her voice trembling. "He came here in peace, to trade, to learn. Enough." Halona's command was thunder. "You will not speak again until this council decides if your tongue carries truth or poison." 2 warriors moved toward her, their presence enough to make her step back, though her eyes did not waver. Eli's heart hammered. "She's telling the truth," he shouted. "I've done no harm to any man here." The chief's gaze snapped to him. "You were seen near the sacred ridge at sunset," he said, "where offerings to our ancestors were stolen." 3 witnesses spoke. "That's a lie," Eli said, desperate. "I was repairing wagon wheels at the settlement. Ask them, they'll tell you." But he could see it already, the crowd's eyes shifting, anger hardening into certainty. Someone had arranged this. Someone wanted him gone. And then he saw him Talon Greyhawk, the chief's nephew, a man of rigid tradition and quiet ambition. He stood apart, his expression unreadable, but in his eyes burned something Eli recognized. Satisfaction. They bound Eli to a wooden post driven deep into the center of the camp. His wrists were raw, his arms stretched tight above him, his shirt torn where the rope dug through. Around him, the tribe formed a wide circle, men standing like carved stone, women whispering behind their hands, children staring with wide, uncertain eyes. Chief Halona raised his arm for silence. "This man," he declared in Apache, his voice carrying like a drumbeat across the open space, "stands accused of violating sacred ground and stealing from the ancestors. He has poisoned the heart of one of our own and must answer for it." The words hit Eli like blows he couldn't block. He strained against the rope, furious and helpless. "You're making a mistake. I never went near that ridge." But his words vanished in the rising noise. Naomi tried to move toward him, but two warriors blocked her path. "Uncle," she pleaded in Apache, turning to Talon Greyhawk. "You know this isn't true." Talon's expression barely shifted. "You defy your father's law and claim a stranger as husband," he said coldly. "You have already confessed your corruption. Why should any word from your mouth be believed?" She stared at him, disbelief giving way to something sharper realization. "You," she whispered. "You told him. You brought this on us." Talon's eyes flickered but did not answer. The crowd began to murmur again. Eli's chest tightened. He could feel the weight of their judgment pressing closer. He'd seen mobs before frontier towns where justice came on a rope and a rumor. This was different, heavier, older, powered by faith as much as fury. Halona turned to his council, 6 elders seated on woven mats. "We will hold council until the sun reaches its peak. Then we will decide this man's fate." "1," he gestured to the guards. "Keep him bound. The woman will remain under watch until judgment is done." As Naomi was led away, she twisted her head to meet Eli's eyes one last time. It wasn't fear that filled them now, it was resolve. Something had hardened inside her. The hours crawled like dying snakes beneath the desert. Sunday sweat ran down Eli's face, his throat dry as bone. Flies buzzed near the blood at his wrists. Around him, life continued, the clang of pots, the distant laughter of children who didn't yet understand what was happening. He closed his eyes, trying to think, to plan. Someone had claimed to see him near the ridge. 3 witnesses, all false. But he had proof: Samuel Drake and the settlers he'd helped with wagon repairs. If he could get a message to them before sunset, they could ride here with testimony. But how? The guards watched him like hawks. One leaned against a spear, chewing dried meat, eyes half-lidded but alert. The other younger, tense, like he wanted to prove himself. Eli exhaled through his teeth, thinking. Words wouldn't save him now. Action might. Inside her lodge, Naomi knelt before the small altar of carved wood and ash where her mother's necklace hung. The guards outside whispered occasionally, their voices low and bored. She pressed her palms together, whispering her thoughts into the dim smoke. Her father's words echoed in her mind. The law is not a weapon. It is a path through chaos, if you have the courage to walk it. And then she remembered something. An old lesson from when she was small, a ceremonial rite no longer used, nearly forgotten. The trial of harmony, a law older than war. A way for the accused to prove innocence not through argument, but through deeds, a test of heart, skill, and spirit. Overseen by the council and witnessed by all. It had not been invoked in decades, but it had never been erased. Naomi rose, her decision burning like fire in her chest. I will make them remember, she murmured. When the council reconvened at noon, the air was tense enough to choke. The tribe gathered in a semicircle beneath the blazing Sunday. Chief Halona stood at the center. The council has heard the testimony of witnesses, he said solemnly. We will now render judgment. Wait. Naomi's voice cut through the heat. Every head turned. She stepped forward, unguarded now, her wrists marked by restraint. Before judgment, I invoke the trial of harmony in defense of my husband. Endertel. A ripple ran through the crowd. One of the elders frowned deeply. That law has not been called upon since before your birth. It still exists, Naomi said firmly. And by our code, any member of the tribe may call it when injustice threatens to stain the spirits of the dead. Halona's jaw tightened. He looked to the council. Several exchanged uncertain glances. Then one old man nodded slowly. It is true. The law stands, though forgotten. Halona's eyes flashed with anger. You risk shaming your family for an outsider. I risk nothing that I have not already lost, Naomi said. The chief turned away, fists clenched. Very well. The trial of harmony will be honored. But the burden is his. He pointed to Eli. If he fails, his death will not be by counsel, it will be by the hand of the people. The crowd murmured approval, a hunger for justice, or blood, or both. They cut the ropes binding Eli. His arms dropped, blood flooding back into his hands with a burning rush. He almost collapsed, but stood firm. Naomi stepped forward, breath quick, her eyes locked to his. The trial will test your understanding of our world, she whispered. Not just words, but meaning. He nodded. Then I'll listen with my heart. Halona gestured toward the northern horizon. Your first task. Find the 5 marks of the ancestors before the sun sets. Explain their meaning. Or die ignorant. Talon smirked. He'll die before he finds 2. Eli stared at the vast open land, endless sand, twisted trees, cliffs glowing red under the merciless light. He'd walked those trails for months, learning from Naomi, listening as she spoke of sacred stones and spirits of the wind. He didn't know if he remembered enough, but he had no choice. The guards gave him water and a small knife, not a weapon, but a survival tool. Naomi was allowed to walk beside him until they reached the ridge. There, she stopped. They won't let me go farther, she whispered. He turned to her. Tell me something, anything to hold on to. She looked at him, eyes wet, fierce. The land listens to truth, she said. If you walk with respect, it will guide you. Then she was gone, swallowed by the guards and the shimmer of heat. The land stretched wide and silent. Buzzards circled high above. Eli walked, his boots crunching over gravel and dry sage, his breath ragged in the dry air. 2 escorts followed, watching, unspeaking. He passed the first hour in futile searching. Every stone, every ridge looked the same. Then, faintly, memory sparked Naomi's voice in the dark of their secret cave. When you see the hand of the wind, remember it's how our people offer thanks. And there it was, a red stone, outcropping shaped by erosion into the unmistakable form of an open hand. He approached slowly, reverently. The hand of the wind, he said aloud. It means offering, giving back what's been taken. The escorts exchanged glances but said nothing. He pressed onward. The next marker took longer. His body screamed with fatigue, but he remembered another lesson where water breaks through stone. Life begins again. He followed a faint trickle of sound to a spring hidden beneath brush, where the earth breathed cool air from deep below. Smooth stones encircled the pool, marked with carved symbols of prayer. Sacred spring, Eli murmured. It's where your ancestors believed the earth spoke to them, where the living meet the dead. Another nod from the escorts. 2 down. Hours passed. The sun sank lower, bleeding gold and crimson across the canyon walls. Sweat stung Eli's eyes, his legs trembling. He found the 3rd marker, a split tree, half dead but reaching still toward the sky. Naomi's voice echoed again in his mind. The broken that still breathes. He touched the bark. Strength through suffering, he whispered. Even the wounded can still grow. The 4th came near dusk, a salt ridge where deer tracks gathered thick in the dust. He remembered her warning. Never take what comes in trust. He spoke softly, barely audible. This place is sacred because life comes here without fear. Only one remained. He stumbled through the failing light, panic clawing at him. Then the land opened into a shallow canyon, the walls lined with stripes of stone in every color of fire and earth. He stared, breathless. The Book of the World, Naomi had called it once. The layers that show time itself. He pressed a trembling hand to the cliff face. The teaching stones, he said, because they remind us we're small, a breath in the story of the earth. When he turned, the guards were gone, replaced by silence. And behind him, a crowd was gathering, council members, warriors, Naomi, and finally, Chief Halona, face unreadable. You have found them all, the chief said. The first task is done. A flicker of awe passed through the onlookers, but Halona's voice hardened. Tomorrow, the second begins. You will face the council and answer what cannot be learned from sight alone. Eli nodded, his body trembling but his spirit steady. He looked at Naomi and saw tears cutting through the dust on her face, and for the first time since the ropes had bound him, he believed maybe, just maybe, he could survive this. Night fell cold and clean over the desert. The fires of the Apache camp glowed like red eyes beneath the stars, and the wind carried the dry whisper of drums low, steady, and ancient. Eli sat near one of those fires, wrists loosely bound again, watched by two guards who barely spoke. The trial of harmony had changed something in the air. People still looked at him with distrust, but there was uncertainty now, cracks in the wall of hate Talon had built. Naomi sat on the far side of the fire, close enough for their eyes to meet, too far to touch. Between them sat three members of the council, silent, like ghosts keeping watch. Her gaze steadied him. In her eyes was faith, not blind hope, but belief built from the fire of shared survival. Before dawn, Chief Halona emerged from his lodge. The old man's posture was still proud, though the weight of leadership bowed his shoulders slightly. "At sunrise," he said, "the second task begins." He looked at Eli. "You will stand before the council and answer questions about our history, our laws, our spirit. Your words will show whether you understand who we are, or only what you can gain from us." Talon stood behind his uncle, arms folded, voice like cold stone. "No one can fake wisdom they don't have." Naomi's hand clenched against her knee, but she said nothing. Eli stared into the flames, replaying every story Naomi had ever told him, the old myths of the sun and wind, the forbidden tales whispered only in winter, the laws of land and water that shaped every Apache life. He'd listened to her voice more than he realized. He had wanted to understand her, not just love her. And that might save him now. At first light, they gathered again. The circle of the tribe was even larger. This time word had spread, and everyone wanted to see if the outsider's survival had been luck or fate. 12 elders formed the council ring. The fire burned at its center. Eli stood bareheaded, dust in his hair, the sunrise casting a golden edge along his shoulders. Chief Halona spoke first. "This test will not be of your strength," he said. "It will be of your heart and your understanding. Speak truth, or fall silent forever." He nodded to the first elder. The old woman's voice cracked like dry leaves. "Why do our people never hunt near water in times of drought?" Eli took a slow breath. "Because water is where life gathers when all else fails. The animals come there with trust. To kill them there would be to betray the spirit that binds us all. It's not mercy, it's respect." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The elder nodded once. Another man spoke. "Why do we leave offerings at the teaching stones?" Eli's voice grew steadier. "Because knowledge comes with a cost. The stones remind you that understanding the earth means remembering those who learned before you, those who bled for that wisdom." The third elder leaned forward. "Why must certain stories be told only in winter?" Eli hesitated. Naomi's words returned to him like an echo under the wind. "When the land sleeps, the heart listens." He answered softly, "Because winter is when the world grows still enough to hear. When the noise of work and war fades, and people can feel the stories instead of just hearing them." The elder's lips curved faintly approval, rare and cautious. The questions came faster now, layered with meaning. Some meant to test, others meant to trap. "What is meant when we say a man walks between worlds?" Eli looked toward Naomi before answering. "It means he's learned more than one truth and carries the burden of both. He can see two skies, but belong to neither." A silence followed that answer, thick, heavy, almost reverent. Naomi's eyes shone. She knew he was speaking of her, of them both. The final question came from Chief Halona himself. "Why do we tell the children that the land remembers?" Eli's throat tightened. "Because it does," he said quietly. "Every action leaves a mark. The ground keeps it, the wind carries it, and the next generation walks over the evidence. What we do, good or evil, never disappears." Halona's eyes searched him for any sign of deceit. He found none. When the last question fell silent, an old councilwoman rose slowly to her feet. "This man has not only listened," she said, "he has understood." The people stirred, some nodding, some frowning. Halona faced his nephew. "You spoke of this man as one who corrupts. He has spoken our truths with reverence. What say you now, Talon Greyhawk?" Talon's jaw flexed. "Words are wind, A man can learn them and still be false inside. Then let the third test show what he truly is, Halona said. By mid-morning, the entire tribe gathered again. Eli stood in the circle of light, the fire between him and Talon, who now moved like a predator preparing for the kill. Halona raised his staff. The third and final task, he declared, is not about words or wisdom. It is about sacrifice. The heart of this man will speak through his choice. He turned to Eli. You will choose between two paths. He pointed toward the eastern trail. There, freedom. You may leave this camp now, alive and unharmed. You will be escorted to the nearest settlement with supplies. You will live as you did before. Then he turned toward Naomi, who stood pale and trembling beside two guards. But if you take that path, this woman who defied her people will lose her place among us. Her name will be stripped from memory, her voice silenced. She will live in exile. The murmurs rose: shock, disbelief, cruel fascination. Halona continued. The other path you stay. You give up your life in the world you came from. You live by our laws, bound to our people, judged by them forever. You will never again trade with settlers or see your homeland. But if you stay, her honor will be restored. Naomi shook her head violently. No, you can't ask that. Talon's smile was thin. We can. Let him prove his love is more than rebellion. Eli looked at her, at the woman who had risked everything. The camp fell utterly silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then Eli spoke. I stay. The words rang like gunfire. Naomi's knees nearly buckled. Eli, no. He smiled faintly through cracked lips. A world without you isn't freedom. It's just emptiness. Halona's face was unreadable. For a long moment, no one moved. Then he nodded. So be it. But before the council could speak again, a young voice broke the silence. Wet. All eyes turned. Talon's son, Jonas, stepped forward, a thin young man, barely 20, his hands shaking but his eyes fierce. Before this binding, there's truth that must be spoken. Talon's face drained of color. Jonas, enough. No, the boy said. His voice trembled but didn't break. My father told me to lie. The air froze. Halona's head snapped toward him. Explain yourself. Jonas swallowed hard. 3 days ago, my father came to me. He told me to say I saw the outsider near the sacred ridge at sunset. I refused. So he found others who would lie for him, 2 men who owed him favors, and one who was afraid. A roar of shock rolled through the crowd. Talon stepped forward, fury twisting his face. You shame yourself before your blood. No, father, Jonas said, his voice cracking. You shamed us all when you used lies to protect your pride. Naomi pressed her hands to her mouth. Tears streaked down her cheeks. Eli stood frozen, his heart pounding. Halona looked at his nephew, a man he had once trusted more than any other. Is this true? Talon's eyes blazed. Everything I did was to protect our people, to keep our blood pure, to keep... Halona's voice cut through him like a blade. You did it to protect yourself. The old chief turned to the crowd, his voice rising. This man has twisted law into vengeance. He has brought shame upon his family and tribe. The council erupted in murmurs, anger and disbelief mixing like fire and oil. The elder woman who had spoken for Eli before stepped forward. Let the truth be recorded. The theft was a lie. The accusation, a weapon. The outsider's honor stands. Talon tried to speak, but Jonas stepped in front of him. Stop, he said, trembling. It's over. Halona turned away from his nephew. You will no longer sit among the council. You will not speak for the people again. Talon's fury broke. He lunged forward, but 2 warriors restrained him. His voice shattered into a roar. He'll destroy you. He'll destroy us all. Halona's reply was quiet, devastating. The only one destroying us was you. When the dust finally settled, the fire burned low and steady. The crowd had dispersed into hushed groups, whispering of what they'd seen of lies, love, and the old laws coming alive again after decades of silence. Eli stood before Halona once more. The ropes were gone. The chief's eyes were no longer made of stone. There was a weight in them, something between respect and sorrow. You were given 3 paths, Halona said. You walked all of them, the body, the mind, and the heart. You have proven that you came here not to take, but to understand. He gestured to Naomi. The council has agreed. You are free to go, or to stay, as you have chosen. But this time, your choice will not be forced. It will be bound by truth, not fear. Eli looked at Naomi, the desert light catching the tears on her face. Then I stay, he said softly. Not as a prisoner, as one of you. The chief nodded, and the drums began to beat again, not for war, but for ceremony. That night, as the stars climbed high and the fires painted the camp in red and gold, Eli and Naomi stood before the tribe. The binding ceremony was simple, their hands joined over a bowl of burning sage, their vows spoken aloud in both languages. When it was done, the old woman from the council approached. She placed a carved feather in Eli's palm. The land remembers, she said. Now, so will we. He closed his hand over it. The scent of sage filled the air, the same scent that had clung to Naomi's hair the night they first kissed in secret. And for the first time since he'd been dragged into the dust, Eli Mercer breathed freely. Morning came soft and golden, the kind of dawn that felt almost like forgiveness. The fire pits still smoked faintly, and the camp was quiet, worn down by the storm of truth that had torn through it the night before. The desert itself seemed changed, as though it, too, had exhaled. Eli stood at the edge of the ridge, watching sunlight crawl over the mesas. His wrists were bandaged, the raw skin hidden beneath strips of woven linen. For the first time in weeks, no one watched him. No ropes, no guards, just the wind. Naomi joined him, her steps light on the sand. She said nothing for a while, only stood beside him as the world warmed from blue to gold. You could still leave, she whispered. He turned to her, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. And miss the sunrise from your world? He shook his head. I've had enough of running. Her hand found his. My father will not forgive easily, she said. You may be accepted by the people, but his pride bleeds slow. Eli's eyes softened. Then I'll let time do what words can't. Below, the camp was stirring. Women began to cook breakfast. Children chased one another between the lodges. A few men lifted their eyes toward Eli, not with hate, but with the quiet curiosity that came before trust. Halona approached slowly, leaning on his carved staff. His shadow stretched long in the morning light. Naomi straightened, but the chief's face was calm. You proved yourself yesterday, Halona said, his English heavy but deliberate. Not with clever words, but with the strength to stand in our fire and not break. He paused, searching Eli's face. My brother's daughter has chosen her path. If you walk it with honor, you may yet earn your place among us. Eli nodded. I don't expect forgiveness, only the chance to live truthfully. Halona's eyes narrowed slightly, but something shifted in them, a faint light. The start of respect. Truth is earned each sunrise, he said, then turned back toward the camp. Naomi exhaled slowly. That's as close to approval as he gives anyone. Eli smiled. Then I'll take it. By midday, a quiet rhythm returned to the camp. Naomi worked with the other women, helping rebuild the food stores that had been neglected during the trial. Eli joined the men repairing a broken corral post. His hands, though raw, moved with familiarity, measured, steady. No one spoke to him at first, but as the hours passed, one man handed him a tool, another nodded in thanks when the job was done. Small gestures, fragile bridges. Jonas, Talon's son, found him later near the water trough. The boy's face was drawn with guilt. I don't know if I can ever face him again, he said quietly. You already did, Eli replied, when you told the truth. Jonas nodded slowly. He's gone. Left before sunrise, took a horse and rode east. Eli didn't answer at first. He only looked toward the distant horizon. Maybe one day he'll find peace with what he's done. Jonas hesitated. You're staying then? I gave my word. The young man nodded once, then extended his hand. Eli clasped it firmly. Then welcome, Jonas said. Brother. The word hit Eli like a wave he hadn't expected. He nodded silently, his throat tight. That evening, as twilight spread across the desert, the tribe gathered for a feast. It was not celebration exactly, but renewal, a symbolic mending of what had been torn. Music rose, soft and slow, the sound of flutes winding through the smoke. Naomi and Eli sat side by side near the fire. Laughter sparked here and there, cautious but real. The tension that had haunted the camp for weeks began to dissolve into something gentler, humbler. Halona raised his cup of corn brew. "To truth," he said, "hard-earned and dearly kept." The tribe echoed the toast, their voices carrying into the cooling air. Eli looked at Naomi, her face bathed in the red glow of firelight. "After everything," he said softly, "it still doesn't feel real." She smiled faintly. "That's how you know it is." The stars began to appear one, then many. And for the first time in a long while, Eli Mercer didn't feel like a man between worlds. He felt like a man who had finally found one worth belonging to. The fire crackled, the drums faded, and the desert stretched endlessly into the dark. Somewhere out there, Talon Greyhawk rode beneath the same sky, swallowed by his own silence. But here, within the circle of flame and song, two souls who had once hidden in shadows now stood in the open. The land remembered, and it forgave. Weeks passed. The desert shifted from gold to gray, from fire to frost. Winds that once carried heat now whispered of the coming cold. The rhythm of the camp changed with the season, the songs slower, the fires closer, the nights longer. Eli Mercer had learned to listen to the land as Naomi had once told him. He rose before dawn, tending horses, cutting wood, mending tools. Some still watched him from a distance, waiting for proof that his devotion was more than love's fever. He gave them patience. Patience was the only language that could cross centuries of suspicion. Sometimes, when he passed the old ridge, the place where it had all begun, he would stop and look toward the horizon. The teaching stones caught the light like an old promise. He touched the feather the councilwoman had given him, now bound into a leather cord at his wrist. Each time the wind brushed against it, it felt like the land itself was breathing beside him. Naomi had regained her place among the people, though not without scars. Some whispered that she had changed, that the fire in her eyes had dimmed. They were wrong. The fire had only moved deeper, into something steadier, quieter. She spoke rarely of what had happened, but when she did, her words carried the calm of a storm that had already passed. One evening, as they sat outside their lodge watching the last glow of day fade behind the red cliffs, Naomi turned to him. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The settlement," he said. "The noise, the deals, the road that never ends." She nodded. He thought for a long moment. "Sometimes," he said finally. "But out there, I was always trying to prove I belonged. Here, I just try to deserve it." Naomi smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Then you understand our way more than most who were born to it." They sat in silence after that, watching the stars appear, first one, then 100, until the sky itself felt alive. The wind stirred the sage-grass, carrying with it the sound of drums from the distant fires. In the darkness, Eli's hand found Naomi's, their fingers laced together easily, as if the universe had always intended it that way. The tribe's children were singing near the river, their voices soft but sure. Eli listened, then closed his eyes. For the first time since he'd come west, he felt no fear of being forgotten. He understood now what the old woman had meant. The land remembers. It remembered betrayal and courage, division and healing, and two hearts that refused to let the desert silence them. The stars burned on above the mesas. The earth, patient and eternal, held their story not as legend, but as truth. And beneath that vast, unending sky, the man once bound for death and the woman who defied her world simply held on to each other, while the wind whispered through the canyon, carrying their names into forever.